Hello, welcome back to On the Mic with Mike. I am Mike Jarvis, and I am so pleased to say this edition I am joined by none other than a favorite Montserrat son of the soil, Dr. Joseph Jackman, who joins me from the Cayman Islands. Hello, Doc. Welcome aboard.
Mike, it is always nice to hear you. And then I also remember when you started at Radio Montserrat, and I've followed your progress all the time. And when we heard you on BBC, I said, you know, that's Mike. You remember when he started at Radio Montserrat? Listen to him now. And we always had this nice conversation, you and you. And whenever you were on, we said, Mike, Mike, we felt so proud that there was we call you our Mike on BBC, you know.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Doc. Even though you're kind of giving a disclosure as to my age right now. And just to get the ball rolling, I just need to remind folks a little bit of background about yourself. So I'm speaking with you. You're currently, well, you've been living in the Cayman Islands for quite a number of years. You were the Chief Agriculture Officer, Director of Agriculture there before you retired. But in Montserrat, you are the very well-known, well-loved, well-appreciated Chief Veterinary Officer. You are very much involved in farming and the agriculture industry. And what a lot of people might not know is that you wrote that Montserrat song, which predated the song Motherland, which has been adopted as the territorial song. You wrote and performed with the Emerald Community Singers, Caribbean.
That is true.
How did that come about? Tell us about that to begin with.
Well, it came about that when I heard that, to tell you the truth, it goes further back than that. They were doing a film on Montserrat. Marvel by then was the secretary of the tourist board.
Yeah, that's your deceased wife from Marva, Mr. Jackman. Yeah.
Yeah, and they asked for people to submit songs because they wanted to use the background. Well, 2 songs were submitted, which they accepted. One of them was sung by Ken Allen, that Edith sang, and the one I wrote. Well, I just come up from Canada. Anyway, they use Ken Allen's song in the film. So I had this song there, did nothing really. It was just there. And then when George Irish started the Emerald Community Singers, when they were still practicing, I said, well, this is something I'd like to join. And because they needed instrument, I used to play the bongo and so on at the time. And he said, well, why don't you come down? We practice at the Maple Leaf School below the hospital there on Sunday afternoons. So I would go down and all of us would meet, all the girls and Nanix and all, the whole former group. We would meet there and we would sing. And I said, well, they were singing all these songs. Well, you all don't have anything new. And he says, no, I said, but I have a song. Why don't we try this one? And George took it, and we decided we'll use that one as one of our Christmas songs. And we were presenting it. The first one was in the cinema by Cosen's thing, and that's where we used to have our meetings. After that, they began having it at the university center, but the first few years it was held at the cinema.
Fantastic memories. So, moving on then from your stint or that part of your talent as a songwriter and performer, you also sang with the Emerald Community Singers. But looking back, we are now November going into December as we speak. What would you say are your sort of favorite and most vivid Montserrat Christmas memories?
Oh, there's so many, Mike, honestly, to go. It all depends on what stage of my life you want, you want to delve into. As a kid, coming on for Christmas, we look forward to receiving our barrels from the States. And of course, my aunts, they send down these barrels. And in each barrel, there was a little package with somebody in the village's name on it or somebody over the island, that I had to deliver. That was my job. I had to deliver it to them, whether I had to walk or in later years I drove, but because I kept on doing it even after I came back from Canada studying. But as a boy, I remember going from village to village, some relative or somebody that they promised something to with a package to give them. That's one of my favorite. The other one was my aunt kept animals, and they had this special hog that they were going to kill at Christmas, and I remember that. I remember asking them to give me the tail and part of the spleen, which they would we'd throw in the raw fire and cook and eat. Things like things like that are what take me back to my youth. Then after we got bigger, we began going out, and uh, we when I was in part of Scouts, third Montserrat, we'd go around caroling.
Oh,
We'd go,
yes, Caroline, that's what we used to call singing out. So you were
yeah,
involved in that as well.
yeah, with the Scouts, the Scouts, and it's we went to all these well, what we call in Montserrat the elite, the rich people. We went to the Hollanders, and we went to the the Mister the houses, and the
The walls.
John Wall was one of our scouts. Yeah, but we went to the walls, and we went to the Osborns, and we went to Government House, and Doctor um I forgot his name. What his name was? Doctor Roy, not Doctor Roy. Whoever was the medical doctor at the time, and the bank managers, and you know, the,
Right.
and we were all taken around in one of the public works trucks, the back of the truck. They would put some little things in there, and we would sit on it and go drive to all these places, from farms, from Trance, and there was somebody, Leo Flex, I think, or somebody was living down there, and we would sing carols, and of course each boy had things like we Three Kings. I remember Cedric Osborne was the first king. The one I sang was Murs Mine, a bit of perfume, you know, and but we had all these guys, and guys who in the coach group were things like the Osborns and the Walls, the Rocks, the Maloney's, and then you had people like Bobby Scotland, whose father was the head of the prisons. You had Harold Daniel, whose father was from a headmaster from St. John's. Um, who else? I'm trying to remember other people who were not the Eads. You had some of the Eads, except the elder boy. The elder boy was a Sea Scout, but all the others were third Montserrat, and we'd go around, and we met at Parsons, and we had got Christmas time. We practiced up there, and to sing these songs and so on.
Wow, I mean, you're painting a fantastic picture here, Doc. And one of the reasons why I'm also speaking with you is because on social media, you've been engaging us with a lot of memory quips, a lot of nostalgic stuff, historical anecdotes. I mean, these things just flood back to you, do they?
But I don't know. My God has given me a fairly good memory, right? And I think because I love Montserrat so much and so many things about Montserrat that my wife will always ask me, when am I going to get it out of my system? And I have to give you this story because it sort of sums up who I am.
Please
Um,
do.
I went to, when I was in Canada, I had an accident. It was my last year in vet school. And that's something we have to talk about one day too, because people, I think it might inspire some people about second chances. Anyway, I had this accident, and so I went down to New York because that's where my aunts were, and I was still on crutches. But there's a lady who worked with my mother when we lived in Antigua, and she had two daughters. And they always thought that I would be that the eldest one, and I would be an item, But we were like 6 and 7 at the time. Eh? Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
And but they always thought we were. So she moved to New York with her daughter. She got married up there, and I went down now trying to ask about what her name was Nala. Nala. He said, well, she got married. She met a guy from South Carolina, and she got married. I said, I lost out. So what about Peaches? She says, well, Peaches not interested in boys she studied. She's not interested in boys at this time. And she said, anyway, we're having a party with a lot of Antiguans. You know most, but most of them are Antiguans. You know most of them there. And there's a girl I want you to meet. And she's really nice, really, really nice girl. I think you all will be very good. So I said, all right. And I said, well, I'll go. I said, but I want crutches. And she lived on the second floor. She says, well, I don't know. We'll see how it works out. But fortunately, she didn't live too far from me, so I could walk from where my aunt lived to where she lived. And I was on my crutches, and she told me I had this young lady she wanted me to meet. So I went up and I saw this. I knew all the other people in the room. They're from Antigua, my youth, my guys. I saw except this young lady sitting at sitting standing by herself, and another guy who was chatting with some of the other Antiguan guys. So I went and I began. I believe me now believing that this girl was the woman she's telling me about. Began chatting her up, and I began asking for her number and all kind of that. So she turned to me and he says, okay, Joe. He says, I don't think it's me. No, she says, would you like to meet my husband? So I said,
Oh
oh Lord,
dear.
oh Lord. I said, I apologize. She said, no, no, who you want to meet? I don't feel anyway. Who you want to meet is my sister. But she says, if you came to tell you that she had Margot was a draftsman and she was working for Grumman, and they had a late night thing. They were working on the space capsule.
All
And so,
right.
so she says, I can't she says to tell you that you come and that, she will call you and so on. And I said, all right. That was the Friday night. The Saturday, I got this call from Marva. We chatted for hours, but that doesn't have anything to do with Christmas. Anyway, I just wanted you to know that that's where Marva and I met.
And that relationship, that long-standing relationship between you and your late wife, that's one of the, I must say, one of the love stories of Montserrat, without question. And just looking at some other things, Doc, as said, you engage us so much on social media when we're having a discussion, or you just raise something about, something that used to happen back in the day, and how it was then. Granted, I mean,
Yeah,
things have changed quite
of course.
considerably, largely because of the volcano. But you moved between Antigua and Montserrat a lot. But in Montserrat, while you were the chief veterinary officer, you were also very much involved in farming. So you got to move through the communities, got to know the people. Just give us a snapshot about life in Montserrat back then. And we're talking about the around the late 60s, early 70s.
Yeah, okay. Well, when I went to Canada in 1958 and did veterinary medicine. Now that is that is a story in itself. Right? It really is, right, Mike?
The
Uh,
microphone is yours, Doc. You're on the mic with Mike. Tell us everything.
okay. I went to Canada in 1958. So there's other couple other monstrations, Hollis Edwards, the 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 Allen brothers, Sisman and Freddie, and Augustus, and they had a cousin there, and we all settled around at Water Square. I boarded when I was in Montreal. When I went into Montreal, I boarded with Mrs. Edwards, Hollis's mother. But I was, of course, away 40 odd miles away out in St. Hyacinthe. And but I would come in, come into Montreal sometime on a weekend if I could get off and so on. Uh, uh, and and that's how we spent our weekend. We would go to the three of us of that. But then we were joined by another guy from Antigua. He used to work in Montreal too by the name of Bertie Lake. And he was the cotton officer. I don't know if you remember Bertie. He used to ride a motorcycle.
Probably, I'm straining my memory, but it'll probably come.
Yeah. Anyway, Bertie and I lived in Mrs. Edwards during when we were off, like at summers and so on, we would stay there with Mammy. We used to call her Mammy Edwards. And she looked after us with all months rations there. It was herself, Hollis, and Arville, his sister. You know, but then in Montreal, when I was in St. Hyacinthe, I was the only colored boy in that whole school.
Mm.
And honestly, you don't know it. I mean, it was French Canada. They spoke French and so on. But I don't want to go into that now because that is
Yeah,
a completely different story.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But well, yeah. So this farming thing, I when I went down
Yeah,
there.
because you were also when you went back to Montserrat, not only were you the chief veterinary officer, you were also, is it Dannenberg Farms? You were heavily involved in that as well?
No, that will come.
Okay, good.
Uh,
That will
so,
come.
yeah, what happened there is that when I went back to Montserrat, Harold Osborne and Hopwood. I don't know if you remember Hopwood.
Yes,
Hopwood
but
was
Mr. Hopwood was he a contractor, was he?
right.
Yes.
Hopwood and they were producing eggs for the island, and then they were always short of eggs. And I was living at Amersham at the time, and I remember one evening we heard a knock on the kitchen door. Of course, the Amersham house was split level, right? One level is like a ground, and the other one you had a double 2-story. And so you had to come up the stairs to get to the kitchen window. And this young man, I think he was about 14 years old or 15 years old at the time, came and he knocked on the window, and he says, "Good evening, ma'am. We would like, you have any work to do? I mean, Mr. Taylor, when he lived here, I used to come and wash the dishes and do things like that and so on. And but I think we were just about to eat or just having a meal. And the boy looked hungry, right? So he said, we don't have anything now. So I said, by the way, you want something to eat? He says, um, yes, please, sir. So we gave Marv a shade out something and gave, 'cause we always have more than we need, right? So
Yeah.
she shared out something and gave him. And when we finished, Marv was about to wash it. He said, no, no, I wash them, right? So I said, well, what do you do? He says, well, I don't have any work at the moment. He was only 15. I said, but you don't go to school? He says, actually, I sort of dropped out of school, sir. I said, all right. I said, look, in the evening, if you want to come by, and I can teach you a thing or two. So he says, one day he said to me, he says, Doc, when Mr. Mason lived here, because apparently he sort of spanned between Mason Taylor, and a guy by the name of Smythe, who was the livestock officer after those guys. And he says they used to rear a few chickens here and so on. Why don't you try it? At that time, as I said, Harold Osborne and Hopwood were producing a few chickens, but they always well. So I said, okay, let's get a couple. So Hashi Eid, whose sister was married to a guy from Barbados. He used to come down with feed. He was a traveling salesman, and got to know him. I told him what I wanted to do. He says that's a good idea, and you can get the feed from Barbados. I sent to you. But she says, but you have anybody you can train? You can take him up. I'll put him to work with my guys. I'll take him up there. I'll pay him regular salary, work he can learn, and when he's coming back, I'll send you the chickens you want to get. So I said, fantastic. I said, how much is this going to cost me? He said, nothing, man. I'm glad to help. Right? More feed for him, right? He's selling more feed and he's selling chicks
Yeah,
too.
yeah, yeah.
So I said, okay. I said, Peter, you ever left the
That, hold on a minute, hold your word there, Doc, because I was going to ask you, the young man that you were referring to, if his name was Peter, because I remember Peter, gentleman by the name of Peter, he drove a little green
that
van, a
was my
little green pickup. Is that the
that
Peter we're
my
talking about?
Peter Reiner.
Peter Reiner. There you go.
That's mine. That was mine. I left it with him.
Okay.
That was mine. So and that was Peter. So I say, you ever left the island? You got passport. You don't have any of those things. So I arranged for all of these things, and he went to Barbados. The guy name was Richard. Richard. Oh
Okay, we'll
gosh,
we'll stick with Richard for
I mean,
now. That's
his
all
name
right.
was Richard, and he was married to Joey's sister, Joseph. Not Joseph. One of them. It wasn't Yvonne. Yvonne was in class with me, the elder sister. And he went up there. When he came back with 100 and came back with 108 baby chicks, and he was able to. They always give you more than 100. You want 100, but they give you more because they
Yeah.
know someone. Peter was able to raise 105. That's how much he learned and was dedicated to it, and so on. And
Because that
Peter
wasn't at that time. I mean, you guys started what was an a poultry industry and an egg industry in Montserrat.
Yeah, exactly. And I started there at Amersham, and we built on. And for once in a while, I'm going to tell you who was my biggest client was Marie, who had the meat shop.
Where was that meat shop?
Um, on on um on Parliament Street, between across from where Mead had his printing shop. The,
Okay, now you
the
know
first
something. You're leading us down. Look, we're gonna probably have to do a series of programs on this. You're dropping some names, you're dropping some locations, and for the people who are listening who would remember Montserrat back then, you are creating a picture of what Montserrat once was. I'm telling you.
Yeah, well, anyway, Marie, she used to come up there and wait, especially at Easter time, because the island was always out of eggs at Easter. Everybody wanted eggs at Easter, and they forget that you can't turn when you order these high producing birds, you can't turn them off. They once they lane, and what you're
Yeah.
going to do, extra eggs, right? So we got the island going. I got Marie took most when at that time now Charles Mercer opened a little supermarket there on Parliament Street.
Is that
It,
the where the Charles Mercer supermarket was located, just next to Bata and across from MS Osborne?
and Mr. Ryan used to live on top of there at one time. T.E. Ryan used
Oh,
to live
really?
at that time, yeah.
You need to write a book, you know. I mean, I'm just skimming the surface here with you. You need to write a book. Let me
Well,
pick your brain.
I,
Okay,
I,
you continue. I'll come back. You're going
yeah,
so
so
great.
So Mr. Osborne, Charles, Mrs. Stewart, he said, "Well, can I have eggs too?" I said, "Sure. How many you want?" I'd send them down, and then Viewpoint began saying we want eggs too, and I'd send them like 40 dozen, and so on, and they became my regular customers. Then one day I went and I noticed that Charles Mercer didn't order anymore. He didn't want any more. And Charles Mercer. So when I said, "But Mr. Mercer, I thought you told me you wanted eggs." He says, "But listen to this now." He says, "They sell too fast. I don't want them." So you believe that because they sell fast, we want more.
You would want more, yeah.
For him, it was they sell too fast. So anyway, and a lot of people would know that too. The first person, the first person who gave Ram credit on Montserrat was me.
Can you repeat that? The first
The
person who
first
gave
person
Rams
who gave
credit?
Ram credit. He had a he had rented a place. His brother was in St. Kitts, and he came over to Montserrat by himself, and he rented a place underneath Ricky Mead's place across from Endeavour, diagonally
Across
across.
from Endeavour Club up in Dagenham, and just bring back some memories here. Was that the building that belonged to a gentleman? I think his name was Rankins, and it was just above the police complex. Am I in the
It was just above the. It was Ricky Mead.
right?
It was Ricky Mead's building.
Okay, okay. I thought it was Rankin's building.
So Ricky Mead came. Rankin was the Rankin you might be thinking of a Barbadian, but then we had a Rankin one session too. But no, that was Ricky Mead's place. And
Okay.
Ricky Mead had gone to Aruba, so came back in some factory, got I don't a thumb, one of his fingers cut off anyway, and he got a lot of money, and he came back and he bought a bus, and he used to run bus from Plymouth to St. John's.
And you
And
just mentioned Endeavour Club there. That is another aspect of Montserrat history that at some point I will have to find a way of getting into that as well.
yeah, I know a lot about that.
And does he know a lot about that and so much more? Folks, thanks for listening. Join me for part 2 of our continuing conversation, this mini-series of Montserrat memories that we're doing with the one and only Dr. Joseph Jackman. This has been On the Mic with Mike. Thanks for listening.